The next thing I want to review with you is about adding or subtracting decimals and then multiplying using decimals. This is just a really brief review, just using standard looking numbers. But when you get to practice this, you're going to see these in the form of finding perimeter and area. So you're just adding them as a perimeter or multiplying them as area. But let's look at this for just a quick review. When you add or subtract decimals, the key rule to remember is that you always line the decimals up first. So I put a number up here without decimals as a quick reminder. If we had the numbers 12 plus 131, we wouldn't put 12 131 up here and add it, because that really wouldn't have the decimals lined up, even though you don't see decimals in that problem. The decimals, I always like to say, are at the, if there isn't a decimal in the number, it is at the end of the number, like a period at the end of a sentence. So if this was 12 and it needed a decimal, I would put it right there at the end. And 131 right there at the end. So when I was going to add these, I would say 131 plus 12, and I would have them lined up that way to add them. And you've done that for several years now. So I just kind of wanted you to get that in your brain as we look at some of these other problems. So over here we have 115, which doesn't have a decimal. So where do you put it? You put it at the end, like a period at the end of a sentence. And then I go ahead and put the decimal down next, because I know it has to be lined up and then I don't mess up. And the next number is 3.4. So I've already got my decimal point, so 3.4. The decimal's lined up. I simply add it as normal. 4 and nothing is 4. Here are my decimal points. 8, 1, 1. So 115 plus 3 4/10 is 118 4/10. So I've lined those up and answered my question. Now it may get a little bit more confusing when I have more numbers. I've left some space down here, and I'm going to do the same thing. Now 12 doesn't have a decimal point, but I know that these others do, so I think I'm going to put it in so I'll be able to remember it, to get everything lined up carefully. And where do I put it? At the end, like a period at the end of a sentence. So I'm going to come right here. And I'm going to have 12 with a decimal point. And I'm going to add, and then I'm going to put my next decimal point, and that is 5/10, 0.5. Then I'll add my next decimal point. So I keep them lined up. And that, oh, that one doesn't have one, but I know it would be at the end, like a period at the end of a sentence, so that would be 131. And then I would get another decimal point, and that's 1400ths. Now, some people like to put an X or a 0 in the spot so I know where I'm adding, and that kind of holds the spots. It's however you've been taught previously. So I have nothing plus 4. 5 and 1 is 6. I hold my decimal right there. 2 and 1 is 3. 1 and 3 is 4. 1 and nothing is 1. So my answer is 143 64/100ths. Now you do the same thing when you're subtracting. So I have 26 8/10 take away 4 1200ths. So I'm going to put my 26 8/10 down, and then I'm going to put my decimal point just so I know it's lined up. And then I've got 4 12ths, and I'm going to subtract. Now there's nothing up here, but I can fill it in with a 0. Can I take 2 from nothing? I cannot. So I'm going to come over here. You know how to do this. That will leave me 7. That gives me a group of 10 there. That looks like 10. 10. Now I can take away. 10 take away 2 is 8. 7 take away 1 is 6. There's my decimal point. 6 take away 4 is 2. 2 take away nothing is 2. So that just shows you that lining up. And then I want to see, is my answer reasonable? I have 26. I'm taking away 4. I'll have about 22. My answer is reasonable. So that's the adding and subtracting. Remember, line the decimal up first. And even if you see this, which you will, in the perimeter of an object, where it says 12 and 4/10 and 3 and 2/10, you can add them up the same way. That was find the perimeter. Okay, so the next thing I want to remind you about is multiplying decimals. Multiplying decimals is very simple. Let's look at these couple of examples right here. You know, I hope you know anyway, that 12 times 12 is 144. Now if you look right over here, at the next example, I've written 12 times 1 and 2/10. My answer, everything about it looks very similar except for the fact that there are decimal points. I have 1 decimal point here being held, and there's 1 decimal point in my answer. When you multiply with decimals, you just multiply the problem as normal. When you get your answer, go back and look in your problem. How many decimal spots are being held in the problem? That's how many you put in your answer. So I'm multiplying this as if the decimals weren't there, 12 times 12, and I know that's 144. And I come here and I see there are 2 decimal spots being held, so I must hold 2 decimal spots here. Again, 5 times 5, you know that's 25. So you come over here and you see 5 times 5 again, you'd multiply it like normal, but then you see 1 decimal spot being held, so you must hold it in your answer also. So let's practice. 5 times 4, we're just multiplying like normal, ignoring the decimal right now. 5 times 4 is 20. 5 times 1 is 5, and 2 more is 7. So the answer is 70. But I have 1 decimal spot being held here, so I must put 1 decimal spot there. So my answer becomes 7, which makes more sense to me when I see that I'm multiplying 5 times just 1 or 1.5. So that makes more sense that my answer is 7 and not 70. Let's come over here and look at this one. Ignore the decimal. 4 times 6 is 24. 4 times 2 is 8, and 2 more is 10. And I'm holding my spot. These are just zeros, so I don't have to worry about that. And I'll add it all up now. 4, 0, 1. 104. But I have 1 decimal spot I must put in my answer. So my answer is not 104, but 10.4. I've multiplied like normal, and I've gone to see how many decimal spots are there to fill in my answer. So it's really simple. You do the regular multiplying, look to see how many decimals are being held, spots, and you put that many spots in your answer. And again, you're going to see this when I ask you to find the area. So you can find the area of something, and it could be 4 times 4 and 5/10 inches, and 6 and 2/10 inches, and you will multiply that just like this so you can see it in a different format. Remember, multiply as normal and then put your decimal spots in.